you mentioned APIs, right? I want to hopefully explain what APIs are to any listeners and what is headless commerce, right? And why is it important for customers to, have a better shopping experience using something like headless commerce?
Yeah, and API stands for Application Programming Interface. So if you think about what an engineer's job might be, they're often having to pull data from many different places in the world, right? Many different applications. For example, if you have an order management system or an ERP system that sits outside of your e-commerce platform, how do you get that data to flow into your ERP, right? Well, most likely the developer that built that connection, they're using the APIs to communicate between both of these systems. So that's sort of what an application programming interface is. APIs have been around for decades, but not every API is created equal. In fact, whole products are built around just designing a good API, and it is a challenge. One of those challenges has always been performance. And one of the specific challenges with e-commerce has always been, this issue of slow page load speed. And so the thinking of headless is simply that you're using the old backend and you're cutting its head off and you're putting a new head on that's very modern. So that modern head, it's able to do what it does, and you don't have to rip out the whole system underneath because it's using an API or several APIs underneath to perform that magic.
Great. Yeah, I recently saw a webinar you did on composable commerce. So can you talk a little bit about what headless commerce is as compared to composable, and what composable commerce is doing, that benefits e-com?
Yeah, so headless is the idea that you've sort of modernized the front end shopping experience to be modern, the way we describe it, up to consumers' standards around things like page load speed. But it's also important to recognize that sometimes these words get confused in the market. So this is to be really clear. That's what headless is. It's not just a front end. There's a back end component. It's two things, but the result is fast page load speed on your website. The composable side is interesting. If you as a business, someone coming into work every day, you use several tools. Everyone does, and if you think about the world of e-commerce, it's a little weird because by default, systems that were built 20 years ago wanted to do everything on one system. If you think about even your phone today, you have applications that do how many things, right? And some of those things are things that the iPhone maybe already does. But you could just install an app to do something better or to do something new, and it just works, right? Well, that's what Composable is trying to do. It's trying to almost set up what the App Store would be on an iPhone, so that you can just plug in the tools that you want, the applications that you want to add, really at any time, and you can mix and match them. But the point of Composable is, hey, I've actually picked out individual vendors for each part of my stack, and now I need to glue them all together. So that is essentially what Nacelle, that's one way to use our technology to help out your business operations. And the business value here is agility, right? I think a lot of folks that I talk to, they get frustrated because they have this great new, marketing plan. They have a vision for what the voice needs to be and for how to reach their new customers. But when they go to tech to say make a change on the website, everything's really slow. Trying new things, new strategies, new technologies is really hard to implement. Everything takes a long time. It's really slow. That is the frustration, I think, of being a modern marketer in today's e-commerce world. And a lot of that is, it's tech debt, right? And it's just very, very difficult to efficiently move forward with a lot of the old school components that these stacks have. Right. So Composable is also a way to improve sort of turnaround time, or what we call business agility.
Right. Yeah, you talk about the old school tech, or old school way of doing things for e-com. For businesses that are not using headless commerce but are building out their tech stack with multi-vendor approach, what challenges will they face? Without a headless system, how will that impact customer experience?
Yeah, again, I think at Nacelle we are maybe a little different than other folks in this headless trend. I mean, there's many that we partner with, some that we compete with, but in general, we always try to tie it back to what are the business metrics that really matter, right? And so for us, we're here to increase your revenue, right? First and foremost. And the problem when you're building out all these separate components, like really great, right? You have all these vendors. This one does the product catalog great. This one does inventory great. This one does order management great. You have all these things scattered. In order to get the information up on your website, you now have to work with each one of these systems, each one of their APIs, right? But you have to work with each one of these systems to kind of get the data in and display that content to your shopper. That's not efficient, right? Put aside all the engineering problems that come with it, just the business problem of, okay, you've built this wonderful back-end stack of technology, but it was at the cost of having so much complexity now that your front end takes a long time to load again, right? So we're back to the same problem. So what a system like Nacelle does is it takes all that complexity and gets it off the plate for you and gives your engineers a single API that's the most performant on the market that goes across all your different systems that you've already selected. So it ensures that we're fulfilling our promise of improving your revenue over time.
Yeah. It sounds like you answered my next question of what is the biggest problem you're solving for your clients. Sounds like agility, page loading, load time. But what is the thing that is keeping founders up at night? Founders of these e-coms that are losing sleep over this big issue. What could that be, right? And how is Nacelle sort of solving that?
Yeah, it's a great question. I was talking to the former CTO at FTD who just moved over to Carlisle. We were just catching up yesterday, and he put it. He used some great terms around it. His name's Matt, and he said, the problem is conversion rate because the nature of conversion rate, meaning it's a living and breathing thing. The minute you're not optimizing is the minute it's decreasing. And so it's insatiably greedy, this idea of conversion rate. And you have to constantly be kind of like pushing on the gas pedal. And the problem is you can get your conversion rate up to a certain spot and say, okay, well, I'm satisfied with that. But that's generally flawed thinking. It's hard to grow a company that way because if you're not doing it, that's an opportunity for your competitors to come in and do it, right? And the difference when you look at a sensitivity analysis of what's important, what metrics are important for your business, conversion rates by far one of the bigger ones. It's a huge lever. So I think that's the hard thing that keeps like our customers up at night, and it keeps me up at night too because it's our opportunity, right? I think if we can leverage technology to kind of align with the primary objectives of what the business needs to get done for their e-commerce assets, and we can deliver the best conversion rate, then we're really doing our job. But yeah, conversion rate is just a thing. If you're not constantly feeding it, it decreases in health very quickly.
Yeah. So you said it, low conversion rates that's keeping you up at night. Nacelle could be a solution to that and certainly help. And that's money that you're leaving on the table, right? If you have those low conversion rates. So super informative. So Brian, there's always a cost benefit to everything. When it comes to an e-com developing their tech stack, we talk about all these technologies on the front end and the back end. How would you recommend navigating all of the decisions a founder is faced with, and where should a business deploy the resources, and what can they put on the back burner or shortcut, to get through and deliver high conversion rates and things like that?
Yeah, this is great. So, I was recently talking to Oshin, who's the founder and CEO of a company called Recharge. They're a big subscription service, and we were talking about this idea that there's so much advice out there for founders and CEOs, right? It's endless, and you're often getting advice coming in a way that's very there's no context on it, right? So I can answer this question. I'm going to try to answer it in context because I think it's really important. So if you are very much in the startup phase of your, consumer facing company, your first goal is to find product market fit, right? It's like to get that thing and build the thing and position it and market it in such a way that resonates with your customers. That is your first goal. Um, Technical complexity should not be your first goal at that stage of the company, because what you really want is the ability to be flexible and nimble, and that's what you need to optimize for, because the faster you can get to some notion of product market fit, the better. And I think that's super, super important in today's world. And I think every marketer can relate to that. So first and foremost, get that right. Once that's done and you're ready now to move on, the next challenge typically becomes, okay, we have this formula, we know our audience, we know in general, if we spend about this much money, about this much will come back. Roughly, that's our formula. We know roughly what our lifetime value is of our customers. We know their retention rate, how frequently they buy. Now it's all about optimizing. And that's where, like, you really shouldn't do any conversion rate optimization until you get to that point, right? So this is where sort of this thing of like, is headless right for everyone? And it isn't, right? It's right for this stage where you're now ready to optimize and slam on the gas pedal and really grow this thing. And it's going to give you, at least Nacelle, in the way we think about it, we want to give our customers all the tools possible to make that part of the journey the most exciting part. But yeah, so I would say for founders, like, be honest about what stage you're in. And, if you're still in the, I'm not sure, maybe there was like a change in the market, some moving dynamics. And so, you're coming up with a new product or new positioning, like, get your marketing stuff done first, get that right, knock that out of the park. And then, let's sit down and start to have a conversation. Okay, now that you have this, how are we going to really maximize this and move growth rates up as fast as possible
Right.
in a sustainable way. And that's where a lot of these things around headless start to come into. So yeah, my advice is like to be super honest with yourself, with where you're at, and then take the most important thing and get super focused on it.
Yeah, that's great advice. That's a great answer. I think, there's phases to everything. And when you're developing a business in e-com, starting from scratch, knowing your product, knowing the market, that's step one, right?
Yeah. I mean, think about the advice that, an early stage entrepreneur might get that's running, a brand, maybe some sort of e-commerce business. It's like this plethora of just, do this for conversion rate optimization, page load speed, use this tool over this tool. Are those if you do a sensitivity analysis to that, are those really the biggest factors at that stage? No. Are those the biggest factors at the very next stage? Absolutely. Right. So,
right. There's a right time for everything, right?
Yeah,
exactly.
That's right. Well said.
No, that's great. And to know that there's so much, advice and information and guides for founders to kind of be able to sift through the ones that aren't relevant and identify those key guides at the right time is huge. So no, it's super helpful.
It's super huge, especially if you have outside pressures. There's disagreement in your team about what is important. There's investors maybe that you have to satisfy. There's customers that aren't happy with XYZ, so maybe we should fix this thing first. I think it's a really hard job. And I think knowing what to prioritize is like, 80% of the battle, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So Brian, let's hopefully end on a positive note. We talked about some of the headwinds facing, e-coms. What are some of the tailwinds? What are the things that are going for e-coms in today's market? We've seen a lot of DTCs struggle in the post-pandemic era, coming from a high growth phase, during the COVID time. What can we expect from businesses as we enter Q4? Are we ending on a high note, and into Q1 of next year, 2024?
I have been, if you listen to some of my past interviews, I've been petrified about what's happening in the Facebook ad market for some time now. I am finally seeing that ship start to turn. And I don't know if it's because so many e-commerce businesses have now gone out of business or really have scaled back so much. It's possible. But what that means is, for those in the market today, or maybe for those that are starting something new, there's less competition. And all of a sudden the formulas start to turn back. into, okay, what's practical. I am most excited about, there's this company called Klaviyo that just went public. I'm sure, most folks probably are familiar with them in this market, but um, I think their approach is really smart because what they're saying is focus on your first party data. Don't worry about all this third party data and all this stuff. Like, you have customers that you can reach out to that have purchased from you before. You have email campaigns from people that maybe have signed up, for text or email. And you collected that data. That's not Facebook's data. That's not Google's data. That's your data. Leverage it. You're sitting on a wealth of opportunity. Make sure you leverage it. And so I think there's just immense opportunity in combining this idea of, okay, how are we talking to our customers even post-purchase? What are we doing pre-purchase to get them familiar with the brand voice, to speak to them and, personalize messages to them, really connect with them. And then also at the same time, make sure that when we do go out to buy ads, that our return on ad spend is maximized, and we're able to use some of this new technology to do that. That's really the formula that I see our merchants that are doing well. That's their winning formula. That has been really impressive to see them grow when others have struggled.
Yeah, super interesting stuff. It's always interesting as a consumer to see it from the business side, to see how many decisions there are along the life cycle of, selling a product online. It's super interesting. This has been, really informative. Brian, thank you for the time. Really appreciate it. If any listeners want to connect separately to Brian and learn a little bit more about Nacelle, we're happy to connect separately on anything e-commerce related. So please feel free to reach out. But again, Brian, thank you for the time. Really appreciate it.
Yeah.
And
great chat. Good questions.
Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah, great chatting with you.
Okay. Cheers.